Fred Vasseur's Ferrari future is in doubt, or it is if you believe some of the big hitters in the Italian media. Some very, very eye-catching stories published there, and inevitably that's made it a huge talking point here in the Montreal paddock ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. John Noble, you've been running around trying to find out what's going on, so what's been said, what do we know?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because, Italian media speculation happens all the time, especially around Ferrari. But normally it's one paper will publish a story and it will run. But today was different. It was two papers, Corriere della Sera, Gazzetta dello Sport, the two big hitters in this league, both published not identical stories, but very, very similar stories, suggesting Fred Vasseur's future with the team is in doubt. Gazzetta said, 3 next races are absolutely critical to his future, that if things don't turn around then and the rest of the season carries on like now, he'll be gone at the end of the season. And Corriere very similar, said, big doubts now about Vasseur's future. Even said Charles Leclerc's so unhappy about things, he's pondering his own future. So the very fact this appeared in two big papers on the same day, there's obviously fuel speculation that there's more to this than just random coincidence.
Of course, and there are lots of specific criticisms saying that Vasseur doesn't really know what's going on inside the team, that he's not taking the problems seriously and the things that aren't going well. And of course, Vasseur's very upbeat in public, isn't he? I mean, he's not saying everything's brilliant, but he always talks about, a tenth or two here and there can make a huge difference. So do you think this is legitimate? Is he really under that kind of pressure, particularly on such an extreme timescale?
I think there's two important things to state here. The first of all is nobody at Ferrari is happy with the season, the way it's gone. They've come into the year very high hopes. Lewis Hamilton had arrived. They were potentially looking at a step forward from last year. They finished second in the Constructors. They were looking at a championship fight. It's not happened. Charles Leclerc said today, we did expect more, but he says, but nobody expected McLaren to make the step it's done. That's kind of clouded their season. But second place isn't a complete disaster for them. They're moving forward. So I think there is pressure to improve, pressure to make progress, pressure to win races. But I think it may be a step too far to suggest that if that progress doesn't happen in 3 races, Fred Vasseur's out. Ferrari themselves played the story down today. Interesting, it wasn't a no comment. It was when it's not even worth commenting on. I think they were dismissive. And Lewis Hamilton as well, you were in the press conference today, weren't you? What did Lewis say about things?
Well, he was asked about it a couple of times. The first time he said that Fred's the right man. He wants Fred Vasseur to be there to lead it. I asked him if it would be foolish to make a change, and he sort of said, well, this is all just media talk, and he basically gave him a massive vote of confidence. And then, interestingly, actually, Lewis Hamilton moved on to saying, well, media's making up stories about me not being around for long term, but I'm definitely here for the long haul. So that was obviously on his mind as well, because I didn't ask him about that. That wasn't an issue. But it's interesting to see the reactions, because Carlos Sainz as well, former Ferrari driver, I put the rumours to him as well, and he was genuinely surprised, although he then did go, well, this is kind of normal for Ferrari in terms of the media stories. But it would surely be absurd for them to consider this as a course of action, because it turns into football manager, just musical chairs of leadership. It takes a very long time in Formula One, and it's not a perfect linear line upwards, isn't it? Sometimes you have these little setbacks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's been endless talk about Ferrari's future teammates. Obviously, a few weeks ago we heard there were rumours that Christian Horner had been approached. Ferrari sources say that wasn't true. There was an approach in 2022. John Elkann went to Christian Horner's house back then to discuss, would you be interested in moving? Christian said no. He actually recommended Fred Vasseur back then. Ferrari also spoke to Andreas Seidel at the time. He turned it down. Fred took the job. The name that's been mentioned in the Italian papers today is Antonello Coletta, who's the WEC boss. And Ferrari have had a tremendous season in sports car this year. They've won the first 3 races. It's Le Mans this weekend. They could add a second Le Mans crown there as well, which will heat the pressure on. So maybe it's Coletta. Another name that we've heard today in the paddock is the Chief Racing Revenue Officer, Lorenzo Giorgetti. Part of an alliance potentially with Coletta to come in. But I think, you're looking to 2026, a new set of regulations, the opportunity that Ferrari have looked at to make a step. And to make a change now seems illogical. Sure, it's not been a fantastic season, but it does seem an awful kind of bad time to reset things if you can do it now, because if you don't hit the ground running in 26, that leads into 27, 28 and beyond.
And there's been something of a revolving door in recent times at Ferrari, hasn't there? And you have to say Vasseur has done a very good job at Ferrari, and it just takes time, doesn't it? People, when you recruit them, they come in, and to have an actual impact, it takes a very long time. You've got to wait for them for ages, and then, like Serra's come in. but it won't be until next year's car that he's had the kind of full influence, because he came in too late to steer this car. So even if you look at it and say, well, they're underachieving, they're failing, it's not really a reasonable judgment. Then you reset, you change, and you just start again. And then 3 years down the line, the same thing happens. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, Fred Vasseur spoke, I think it was around the Monaco Grand Prix time, just about the challenges of the team. He's talked in the past, I remember speaking to him here when they signed Loic Serra. He says the lead time to make change is immense. I think he signed him 1 year. It took 2-3 seasons before Loic was on board. He says a lot of the changes that Loic wants to make, stuff's happened beforehand. Enrique Cardier had laid down the suspension that they're looking to change. There's no quick fix in Formula One. It's a very, very kind of slow process to get things done. So I think it's interesting why it's come up. There's one theory as well, because we see stories appearing in 2 different newspapers on the same day. You think this must be a coordinated attempt to do things. But is it coincidence? One suggestion to me today was actually this story has been bubbling away for a while. The papers are debating when to run it. We had an Italian football match on Monday, Italy-Moldova World Cup qualifier, and their coach, Luciano Spalletti, had announced the day before he's leaving. So football had taken over the papers. They're all waiting, okay, let's keep this story for Thursday, because then we can get some decent space, make a big splash of it. And 2 papers did the same thing, and it's arrived and made a big conspiracy. So, is it coincidence? Has it been planted? Is there more to it? But I think, like most things in Formula One, there's no smoke without fire, even if things aren't burning brightly at the moment.
Well, at that point, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think one of the things that you can say does happen is if you have someone coming into an organisation when things are going well, when they're new, or when they're having a year like last year, then everything's rosy. But when performances slip, that's sometimes when the cracks appear, and perhaps those who don't like the regime, and nobody's going to be 100% happy with the leadership, they'll come out of the woodwork and they might start planting stories here and there. So that's where there could be something in it, couldn't there? That there's at least people who, not necessarily about to sack Vasseur, but who want to start applying pressure. And this is something we've seen historically with Ferrari a lot of the time, haven't we? Pressure applied from different people, from below, from above. So it feels like there could be something there in this, even if it doesn't mean Vasseur's going to be axed in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's a step between deliberately planting a story to say, this person is definitely out, to perhaps no longer, giving a full vote of confidence to say perhaps there are questions. And I think even if you asked Fred themselves, are you happy with the job you're doing? Do you think it's good enough to secure your future long term? He'll probably say no, says that they need to be better. Fred Vasseur was signed to win the championship, to bring the championship back to Maranello. Mattia Binotto hadn't done that at Ferrari, finished second, it wasn't good enough. Ferrari's there to win. So I think it's intriguing. I think it would be very unusual, but not totally unheard of, for Ferrari to start scouting opinions, just putting feelers out there to see what's going on. But I would be very surprised if we're in the middle of a season, a lot of changes coming up, the new suspension coming for Ferrari, the start of that relationship with Lewis Hamilton, this push towards the front, a slightly better Spanish Grand Prix, to suddenly think now's the time to make a change.
It would seem to me to be a huge mistake to do that, because Vasseur's all about the process, work through it. You can't fix this just like that, and to pretend that they could would be a problem. Maybe he should have been a little bit more open in public about it. He very much downplays things, tries to keep everyone calm. But that's also what Ferrari historically needs as well. So would you consider making a change? I certainly wouldn't.
No, and I think part of their problem also is, when Lewis Hamilton joined the start of the season, there was a great deal of huge hype around the team, big ambitions. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, has come to Ferrari to win, not just win races, to win another championship, win that 8th title that he's been after. So the ambitions go up, the expectations go up. The team openly talked about a new start, a new era for the team, moving on from disappointments last year. That hasn't been delivered has been quite difficult to manage. If there'd been a more low-key start to the season, much more under the radar, with no talk of expectations, things wouldn't be so difficult now with this season. But I think, as Charles Leclerc said earlier on today, McLaren's making everybody's lives difficult.
Absolutely, and of course the thing that will change things is results. It's a results-based business. They can have a strong weekend here in Montreal. That will calm some of the anger, but of course Montreal was an nadir for Ferrari last year. It was a horrible weekend, so perhaps not the ideal place for them to come, but there's upgrades coming a few races down the line. Things could change.